Well, I'm delighted to say that joining me on the Godcast this week is Fergus Craig. Now, Fergus is a stand-up comedian. He's an actor. He's a writer. He's a man of many talents. Fergus, it's brilliant to get you on the Godcast. How you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Where's home, Fergus? Are you feeling the freezing cold as we are here in Lancashire?
It is very cold. I live in London, but I lived a couple of years ago. I lived in Montreal for a year, and that got like regularly to like minus 20,
Right, crikey, that is cold.
minus 30. What I think it was got to minus 35 one night, and I
Yeah,
remember it would get to the point where it'd be minus 10. You know, that was sort of like your average temperature in like January, February. and I and that would feel normal. And I couldn't imagine ever feeling cold again in Britain because zero was like
yeah,
balmy.
yeah,
Now, what is it in London? It's like 5 degrees outside, but I just
yeah,
feel cold. So
yeah.
I completely got used to London temperatures again.
Good stuff. But you're down in London, Fergus. But you're familiar with the north. You went to uni in Manchester, is that right?
Yeah, Manchester. I think it says on the internet, University of Manchester. But I went to Manchester Metropolitan
Okay.
University. Yeah, the old Poly. Yeah,
What was your craft there? What were you studying other than
studied.
alcohol and late nights?
Yeah, I studied acting. So it's a like the acting course at Manchester Met is a bit, it's sort of separate to the rest of the university. It's basically a drama school. So I did a degree, but it doesn't really
Yeah.
mean anything.
How did you find that, Fergus? Did you find it a competitive environment, or was it kind of everybody pulling in the same direction? A class full of lovies, for want of a better word. Was it kind of was there moments of I'm better than you, or was it just fabulous?
It was a lot of fun. It was probably competitive in a sort of petty way. But I mean, even maybe it's different if you go to RADA or something. But even though it was a very hard course to get on, only a few of them are actually end up being professional actors. So there was like a good cross section of the country on that course, I
Yeah.
guess.
When
There's
I
a
when
lot.
I when I got my theology degree awarded, Fergus, I got it awarded at Carlisle Cathedral of all places, but it was attached to Cumbria University and it was full of drama students and as the theologians went through and picked up their awards, there was a very gentle ripple. But as the drama students went through, there was this monumental cheering and woo woo, and all that. But I couldn't help thinking to myself, where are all these people going to work? There's only so many jobs to go around. But you've been very fortunate, Fergus, haven't you? You made the breakthrough. What was your first break in post uni life?
Um, well, straight after uni, it went all right. I got a few adverts, which are always very helpful. And then I got into the RSC. So I remember I was doing the night shift in Tesco, living with my parents. I did it for like a couple of weeks, and then I got a job in the RSC to move to London. And I told the woman, my like boss at Tesco, that I was doing that, and she couldn't believe I was making such a massive mistake. And all I'd done is stack shelves to like a completely just I'd competently stacked shelves, and she was telling me I had a real future at Tesco. And I often look back and I think, oh, maybe I would have had an easier life if I'd have just kept like doing that. I could have ended up like on the board at Tesco or something.
Mm,
But no, I
that's
went to the RSC, but then I had a quite tough couple of years after that. So the thing that got me in was I was in a double act with a guy called Colin Holt,
yeah.
and we did a couple of Edinburgh shows, and that's what sort of like got me in.
It's so funny you're talking about Tesco. As somebody who used to be a manager for Argos, I remember those
Did you?
conversations, trying to persuade people to hang around, when they were clearly destined for far greater things than pulling a cage of toys into a stockroom.
I
Um,
have to
for,
look back and think I made the wrong choice, but yeah, I should have stayed.
Fergus, what was your first paid gig then? Can you remember?
Do you know what? My first paid acting gig. I was still at drama school. I was just finishing, and Radio 5 Live, or whatever they were called then, were doing a dramatization of. Do you remember the trial of Lee Bowyer and Jonathan Woodgate, the
Yes, I
football?
do. Yeah, vaguely. Yeah, yeah.
No, it was a big scandal. There'd been, well, it's quite grim, really. They'd beaten up a British Pakistani lad, or been accused of it, and there was a trial, and they were doing some documentary about it where basically I played Lee Bowyer in court
Right.
on Radio 5. So I mean, everyone's got to start somewhere, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
First one, Lee Bowyer.
And your relationship with Colin, who you touched on, was that an immediate kind of let's do something together, let's write together? How did that evolve? Just tell us, and perhaps just for people who aren't aware, just tell us a bit about that partnership.
Yeah, well, we went to drama school together. We were in the same year in Manchester, and we're very good friends. And we went through drama school. We got the chance to stay in Tanzania for 5 weeks, putting on a play, and we had a lot of. We sort of like organically became a comic partnership during that trip, and then when we came back, we did a couple of shows in Manchester, and then yeah, eventually by about 2003, when Colin moved to London, where I already was, we started doing comedy gigs in London, and then we were a proper double act. I guess that's when we started sort of taking it seriously.
Yeah. For some, I'm somebody who has written a book and write in the singular. How did that partnership work in terms of writing? Was it, I have a mate. We've done some sketches as vicars in the past, and I would usually write, and then we'd kind of ad-lib it a bit and form it. How did it work for you and Colin? Was there prescribed times to sit down and write, or did it just come quite naturally to you?
It was best in the early days. It was harder when it became more of a job. But we both, when we first started in London, we both worked in a call center, the same call center, and we would take Wednesdays off and do a show that night, and we would always write 2 or 3 sketches that day to perform that night. And it was we hated our job at the call center so much that it was such a joy to do that. And we just messed about. You say this, I'll say that. That's funny. We just made each other laugh, and it was just very, I don't know, joyous. And then we did the show that night, and that's all our best stuff came out of that time, really, when it was more of like a hobby. And then when we went on, yeah, we took it a bit more seriously, and it was more a job. But yeah, we would always be with Colin, we would always be in the room together, trying to make each other laugh. Someone sitting at a computer, trying to write it all down.
Yeah. I'll come back to the writing in a bit if that's all right. But who were you influenced by, Fergus? I'm interested because I think I'm a few years down the corridor than yourself, and it was funny because last night I watched on BBC4 a rerun of the very last Young Ones, which was kind of, I just adored the Young Ones as a kid. Who were you influenced by as a young guy in terms of comedy?
Well, my big era, like coming of age, it was the 90s. So all the obvious ones from then, really, like Reeves and Mortimer, and all Chris Morris stuff, and Father Ted, Partridge, obviously, all that gang, all the 90s stuff was. But I mean, I don't know. When I was a kid, I loved Mr. Bean. I loved Blackadder and the Young Ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
But no, my sort of era was the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And something else I was interested to ask you about was, character comedians. Comedians who play characters. There seems to, I might be wrong, but it seems to have kind of dropped off the TV networks in terms of things like the Fast Show, things like just sketches. Do you think? Do you agree with that? Do you think those times will come back, or do you think it's just comedy's moved into a different genre, if that's the right word, and sketch comedy is kind of a thing of the past?
Well, I'd like to think it would come back, but in a way, I can't really see it happening. I think there's two main reasons that that's happened. One, sketch comedy is really expensive to shoot because you say, oh, we're going to do a sketch on a farm, and then we'll do a sketch in a doctor's surgery, and then we'll do a sketch in a supermarket. There's a lot of different locations and costumes, and each new one is expensive, right? But if you're doing a sitcom, which you could say is also dying, but at least with a sitcom, you've got like usually 2, 3 main locations and you can shoot. So it's just a lot cheaper to shoot. So sketch shows are really expensive and there's a lot less money to make things in TV at the moment. And then also, I think the internet, for sketch shows in particular, rather than people would used to sit down and watch a half an hour sketch show, and maybe people always said about sketch shows, they're hit and miss, But now people will just watch videos on the internet. You get a 1 or 2 minute video. If you wanted to make a sketch, you just make it, don't you? You just make a video, and then if you're lucky, that might go viral.
Mm-hmm.
But to put that on TV seems like almost sort of old fashioned. I think that's what it is. I think sketches in particular have just been killed off by the internet.
Yeah. Do you think that has a knock-on effect in terms of comedy writing? Do you think, it kind of shifts people away, like, why should I bother if it's not going to go anywhere?
Maybe. I think it's really difficult. I don't know what. I mean, there's obviously I don't know if there's more or less than there ever were before. There's obviously a lot of young comedians coming up, but they probably they're more likely to end up as like YouTubers or on TikTok or whatever, which is a little bit different. But yeah, everything's sort of changing. That's not necessarily a bad thing. There's also like reality TV as sort of, someone saying like, I think that's sort of not killed off, but made sitcoms more difficult because reality TV, a lot of like documentaries or that's more on the reality side are sort of cast like sitcoms. Do you know what I mean? Do you see what I mean? They'll get like you wouldn't make necessarily The Office now, although that was a spoof of a documentary. Now they just go, well, it's cheaper. Why don't we just make the documentary and we'll find a David Brent like guy?
Yeah,
and we'll find some funny people.
Yeah,
from real life, and we'll film them. And I think that's a lot. There's a lot less. It's to tuck into there. It's a lot less meat. It's a lot less substance. But I think that's sort of what's happened.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. And in terms of your involvement as a comedian, Fergus, you're with Colin for quite a while, and then this, was it difficult to move on, or and become a kind of a standalone artist? Were you fearful of that, or was it the natural way it went?
No, it was quite difficult. I didn't like it. Just sort of organically happened, came to an end, and it was quite difficult, really, the whole thing. I did an Edinburgh show on my own, which was all right, and then I don't know. Yeah, there's like pros and cons to working on your own. It can be a lot more fun working with somebody else, but then your sort of like whole career and happiness is tied to someone else and where they're at. And
do you miss it?
Do I miss it? I miss working with other people as often as I used to do. Yeah, I do miss.
Do you miss Colin, working with Colin?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, I miss. It's more like I sort of miss being 23. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
yeah,
You're
that
not
was a
alone.
time. Yeah, that was a time that was like, in some ways, very difficult at the time because
Yeah.
that being in your early 20s, you're not sure about everything. But it was all the whole, everything was filled with possibility, and it was a lot of fun just making stuff with your mate. So I do miss that, and I do miss collaborating as often as I used to do,
Yeah.
if I'm honest. But there's
And
benefits to doing.
Fergus, I was looking at your resume. I mean, cracky, it's pretty broad, isn't it? You've done many different genres of comedy. You've worked in children's comedy as well. I noticed. Just tell me about that, because I think I've had a couple of comedy gigs at our church, and Tony Vino. I don't know if you know Tony's a cracking comedian up here. And he does he does like a show for a more adult audience, but he can cross the void and entertain the kids at the same time. I could never do that. I find that a really difficult working in that field. How was that? What is the gear change, if you can put your finger on it?
Well, I've never done live comedy for kids. I'd imagine I don't know how confident I'd be at that. I wouldn't mind a go someday. But for telly, we did a sketch show called Sorry, I've Got No Head. I was in that, and that was for sure. And I think I wasn't in the first series, but I think the whole idea of the show was it was writers and performers just trying to do what we thought was funny, but making it accessible to kids. So obviously there's things you can't do for kids. And obviously you can't do a job about, you can't do a sketch about something that kids wouldn't understand, like we'd have to remind ourselves kids don't understand a lot of jobs. Do you know what I mean? But beyond that, we were just trying to be funny. So we were just being very silly and trying not to dumb down. So in a weird way, it's not that different. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, was it as enjoyable for you? Did you enjoy just being crazy?
Yeah, it was so much fun because it was very hard work actually. Sorry, I got in my head because it was like a lot of sketches filmed in a day. So, but it was just a lot of fun. The people in it were enormous fun, and you sort of like that's another thing you don't quite appreciate it at the time that that's not necessarily going to be your whole life doing stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? It was like so many different characters every day.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
And something else I'd like to ask you is around your as I said at the beginning, you're a writer, you're an actor, and you're a performer. Which of those do you get the greatest satisfaction from? Do you enjoy the creative process where literally at a screen as we are now, and you start that process, or is there no bigger vibe than getting on a stage and performing it, or in front of a camera?
It's always the thing that you're like not doing that you want to be doing. I think the thing I enjoy most, the actual process, is making TV because of the nature of my career. I've spent so much time on my own. Do you know? I spend so much time at home writing that when you're actually on a TV set, you've got like a crew and a workplace, and you're always busy, and you're making something. Yeah, that's the thing I'm most enjoy is filming TV, which is probably because I don't do as much of it as I would like. But yeah.
And as a writer, Fergus, maybe you could just explain to the watcher or the listener the biggest frustrations. You know, I know quite a well-established comedian who's written numerous bits and bobs in the hope that TV, radio might pick them up, but with no success. Just explain how, even as somebody like yourself, Fergus, who's well established in the industry, the challenges and frustrations of trying to get your work get picked up for TV or radio.
It's awful. It's really horrible. It's like, it's just the nature of the beast. But when you look at it, you know, I'm always writing scripts, some of which don't go anywhere, some of which go quite far but don't get made. Sometimes one will actually get made. But the whole process is awful. Because I mean, there's only so many slots, right? Available. I mean, everyone knows it. I mean, it's what, if any child says they wanted to be in this industry, a parent would say, you know, it's a very difficult thing. You know, there's only so many slots on TV, and there's a lot of famous comedians who are trying to get sitcoms. Some of whom probably got less chance than me because of wherever they are in their career, or what they're perceived to be by the industry at that moment in time. There's only so many slots. It's really hard. I don't know what else to say. It's like, there's a lot of you spend a lot of time working on things that never see the light of day, and there's a lot of rejection, and a lot of, you know, some years are really good, and then sometimes there's a lot of anxiety about your finances. So I've never had a real job with a salary, and I haven't done a real job of any sort since 2005, which is a really nice thing to be able to say, but at the same time, it's really hard sometimes making it work.
Yeah, you just got me thinking there, Fergus. So do you consider yourself as a creative artist? I asked this question because I interviewed for the Godcast a musician called Lone Lady. Who's based in Manchester, who's had relative success, but never enough to kind of go and live in the Caribbean, you know, just to kind of get by.
I love Lone Lady, by the way.
She's fabulous, absolutely fabulous music.
I've got her album on my phone. She does one of my favorite songs. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, and she was like, you know, I need a bit like yourself, you know. Said I've never had a proper job, and people hear me moan about the financial situation, but she said, and I could go and get an office job, but you know, I need the space. I need to work in isolation to be at my creative best. Do you kind of get that then?
Probably not that need to work in isolation. I really like working with other people. I feel very privileged to have like spent this amount of time deciding what I want to do with my days most of the time. So yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like an artist in a sort of like lofty way. No. I just feel like I want to cling on to this life that I've built myself.
That's really honest. I like that answer, Fergus. It's true though, isn't it? Just cling on. But interestingly, your writing has evolved into being a book writer, tips for actors, and these what's the best way to describe them? Spoof crime stories.
Spoof crime novels, yeah. That's what I've done. I created this character, Detective Roger LeCarre, and I've written 2 so far novels that are just very, very stupid.
Is it hard to write very, very stupid, Fergus? I mean, you know, I can say I've just published a book and I love it, but you know, the story was it was a real story, so it's quite easy to tell a real story. To create,
right.
You know, stupid crime stories, I could just wouldn't know where to start. Is that an easy process for you? Does it come really naturally, or are there endless hours of kind of drinking coffee, thinking, where the hell am I going with this?
Well, there's definitely that. That definitely happens. I definitely wouldn't call it easy. The story is it's good. It's good to get the story cracked, but really, I'm parodying crime novels, so they're very formulaic, right? So to fit it within that template is not that hard. But just trying to, because I'm writing, they started out as 1 or 2 minute sketches, but these books are like, they're not huge books, but they're proper novel sized books. And to hold the reader's attention for that long whilst doing a lot of stupid jokes is difficult. So sometimes I'll find myself going down rabbit holes, and it's a long time before anyone else reads or hears any of the jokes. So I'll write some chapters in both of those books are just so absurd, the situations that he finds himself in. And I think I'm going crazy. And I'm like, it's so long before anyone else gives me any response to it. There's that real fear of like, will anyone else find this funny? Do I even find this funny anymore? This is just insane.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
I'm
one.
just
Sorry, I was going to say in the first novel, he goes. Roger LeCarre ends up going to New York, and I think that I sort of had a breakdown while I was writing that part of the book. It was just so insane. I didn't know how I'd got there, but I think I got away with it.
Yeah, I've interviewed a few authors. Jeffrey Archer, kind of at the crime novel, maybe a slightly
Right.
different take to yours, and then Steve Nallen, who has just written a children's book, and they both kind of alluded to the fact that the joy comes from sitting at the desk in the morning with writing and not quite sure where you're going. Do you get a buzz out of that? Just letting your imagination run free.
Yeah, I do. There's a lot of satisfaction when you do a paragraph that didn't exist 20 minutes before
Yeah.
and you really like it. There's good days and bad days. It's sometimes a bit of a slog, but yeah, it's a mental thing. I mean, my books there's a lot of jokes in them, right? So just the process of writing, I don't know how many jokes there are in the book, like 1 or 2 thousand jokes or something. The process of writing that many jokes and trying to make them different and interesting is
Yeah.
It's
How
quite
long
fun.
did the first book take you to write, Fergus? And then how long did the second book take?
Maybe the second book was a bit quicker just because I had less time to write it, but they probably both took about 3 or 4 months of actual full on writing. Um, yeah, about that long,
And
one or
if I,
2,000 words a day.
and now I've joined the writing community. Can you offer some encouragement to writers, Fergus? I mean, just tell us perhaps how you got your publisher. Was it picked up quickly? Was it quite protracted? Was it similar to the TV stuff? You've got to keep going. You've got to get the right person. You've got to get the right deal. Just share a bit of that if you would.
What the publishing world for me was, I imagine people will find this quite annoying because I was very lucky. Um, my route was quite unusual. Basically, I was doing this character on Twitter, these videos, this middle class dad character called Martin Fishback, and he was reading out extracts from these crime novels that didn't actually exist, and they went viral. A couple of those videos went viral, and I got approached by a couple of publishers to ask me to write a novel. It was for me, I was very fortunate. It was like a publisher's idea that I wrote a book before it was mine. So it is. I don't know much about how to get into. I mean, it's It's very difficult, isn't it? I think the main thing is just to write what you think is funny or interesting, and don't judge what you're writing too much while you're doing it. Just write and write
Yeah.
and write. And then it's up to other people to decide whether it's good or not.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, there's no point thinking about being a writer for a long time.
Yeah.
You just have to write. And that, particularly with books, right? Yes, there are fashions, there are trends of what sells and what publishers want to see. But really, you could have a book about anything written in any style, and it could find an audience.
Mm.
So you might as well just keep writing and find out what kind of writer you are.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the gods whether that goes anywhere. You know, it's kind of beyond your control. You just have to do the best that you think you can do.
Yeah. And there was the very tenuous spiritual link there. It's up to the gods.
Yeah.
And is there more to come in this series, Fergus? Are you writing the next one? Or you've got plans?
I hope so. I'm not writing the next one yet. I'd love to write more, for as long as people want to read them. I'd love to do a TV thing with it, you know, talking about that with people. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
But I'd love for it to be.
So just remind people the titles again, Fergus, if anybody's interested to go and make a purchase, available on Amazon. And those YouTube clips of the character Martin are also there to see, aren't they?
Yeah, well, you can find some of those clips on my Twitter at Fergus Craig, but the first book is called Once Upon a Crime, and the second is called Murder at Crime Manor. They're great stocking fillers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fergus, I've really loved chatting to you. I love comedy. It's my favourite genre. I love the creative instincts of performers and writers, and just, you know, what's lined up for Christmas. Are you working, or are you choosing to do nothing over Christmas?
We're having the family over for Christmas. I don't know what's coming up before Christmas. You never know with my job what's coming up. Do you know what I mean? I've got a meeting later today about potentially going to Toronto next week, but I don't know. I really don't know what I'm doing from one week to the next. That would be nice to be filming in Toronto.
Yeah.
But there's a high chance I won't get that job. So I don't know.
No.
I never know what I'm doing next.
No. But you're looking well on it, Fergus. You're looking well. You're looking happy, which is good. And thank you for your encouragement to other writers, particularly, and thanks for making us laugh for many years. And may you have a great Christmas when it comes. And thanks for coming on the Godcast. Thanks, Fergus.
Thanks for having me. Bye.